Right. Wasasiyeti. How's everybody doing?
That way south. Is that right?
Keshwasa.
Yes.
Keshwasa. Okay. Well, let's just go over a couple maybe right away. So we do a little bit of how you doing type stuff. So we'd start thinking about being conversational at some point. Here's another thing. So here's two phrases that we can learn. And then let's just learn one answer for now. And it's a good answer because it doesn't even really say how you do. Again, so there's a number of different, we'll go over like a whole slew of answers. Some of them, there's quite a few that are just sort of smart aleck answers, which are pretty fun. So actually I wrote this one under, but maybe that's number one and this is number two. And so this is when you see each other, so we really encourage folks to stay in the language when we're talking about Tlingit and use it. So in order to use it, you've got to learn some basic phrases. So the way, again, that we learn Tlingit in here is we'll work on pronunciation. We'll start learning the names for things. So we're learning some nouns. And then we start learning these phrases where you can just sort of fill in the blanks. And then in the addition, you start learning some other phrases and learn how to use them. Because the most important thing with language is being able to converse, being able to communicate. For me, that's more important than being accurate or perfect. As long as you keep yourself on some path that you will always be trying to improve, trying to continue to understand the language. But the big thing for endangered languages is that you're not going to break the language, you're not going to hurt the language, you're not going to... it's better to take a risk of getting something wrong or maybe even being slightly offensive. If you're offensive by accident, that's a bigger deal than being deliberately offensive. But the important thing is if you're making mistakes and you're doing things, you're actually trying the language out. If you're seeing how it works or you're trying some things out for yourself. And as students and as a learning community, it's a sort of a safety zone where you can, it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to sort of goof around and try things out. And it's also okay to be corrected. Some people get really offended when they're corrected. It's like, how are you going to learn? So the type of corrections we try to do here, because sometimes I've taught people Tlingit, and then they'll go, oh, that's wrong. And they'll talk like that to other people. And that's not, I don't encourage you to, I discourage that. What I would rather you do is, you know, sort of like when a child tries language out, you just say it back to them the right way. And that's it. You don't say, oh, that's wrong. Because I do know some speakers who will do that as well. Say, no, that's not right. But they won't tell you the right way to say it. But most of my teachers are awesome because they know what you're trying to say. Or sometimes they'll ask you, like, what are you trying to say? And then they'll help you, and they'll tell you how to say it. Because when you put Tlingit together, and when we get to that part, you'll see it usually goes together differently than you would think, because grammar dictates how you think. So we're going to learn how to think a little bit differently. So this one, there's 3 verbs on the board. And when we get to verbs, they're big, scary monsters. That's what they are, but monsters are awesome. So we're going to learn about verbs. But we're going to do it just sort of, I'll just sort of throw it like, it's a verb, no big deal. Whatever. It's a huge monster. But eventually we'll, you know, second year, third year of studying Tlingit, we'll really start to look at those monsters and see how they function. So this first one is Yak-A. 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 Yak-A.
Yak-A.
It's Good. Right. And I don't know if you guys understand this. I'll spell it. I'll try and type it out later. It's good. That's what this means here. This is a verb. It's good right now. This is your first verb in Tlingit. It's a good one. Okay. The second one is a little more complicated, both in sound and in structure. Irsatini.
Irsatini.
Irsatini. Irsatini. So this gets a little tricky right here. Going on as your mouth is rounding for that part. Satini. So this is I see you, right? And then this is we'll break down here in a second. Okay. Yeah. So this right here is you, the object. This part right here is I, the subject. This part right here is what we call a perfective marker, which means the verb has already happened. Tlingit has a different sense of time than English does. You don't have English, kind of has past tense, present tense, future tense. Tlingit has future tense, but the past and the present sort of they intermingle, right? This could be yesterday, and this could also be right now. And so you'll learn how to use language differently. You'll learn how to think about time and space a little bit differently. And then this part basically means to see something specific, and then this is tying it together, just saying it's this because of this. So this is how you sort of tie things together and Tlingit. We'll get there. You don't have to worry about that stuff. But all together, you got Yak'e Irsatini. Yak'e Irsatini. Irsatini. Yak'e Irsatini. Yak'e Irsatini. That's a decent greet. It's good to see you, right? It's good. It's good to see you. So now this part, we can probably do the whole thing. Wasa'iyati.
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 Is the verb. Here's the you part again. Yati is to be. Wa is how. Sa is say. So we're going to get to forming questions in Tlingit this week. But there's one really important thing I want to drill into your brain. When you ask questions in English, what's the language process for asking a question in English?
Usually it ends in a rising inflection.
Yeah, so it rises at the end, right? Is that what you mean? Right? My name is Hone, right? So if it comes up at the end, that's signaling either a question or perhaps doubt, right? Because maybe there's some new word you're trying to learn how to use, or maybe you're not sure. That was an eagle, right? And so that turns it into a question. But it's not how you do it in Tlingit. Tlingit has tones. You control those tones all the time. So you don't say, Wasa'iyati. No. Wasa'iyati. Tlingit asks questions by inserting certain particles. This one, sa, turns something basically into a question when it combines with one of these other things. How, say, you're doing. How are you doing? Wasa'iyati. Then we've got Keshwasa.
Keshwasa.
Keshwasa. Keshwasa.
Keshwasa.
Keshwasa.
Keshwasa.
Okay. Okay. So this first part is Keish.
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 And that means not. Right. You're going to see it all over the place. It could be, that's not a bear. That's not a dog. I'm not me. Right? Or it could turn verbs negative. So you're going to see it all over the place. There's certain times in Tlingit where you have regional variations. Oh, they say this, we say that. You know, go to some places. You guys say soda or pop? Who here says soda? Who says pop?
I call it Coke.
Coke, yes. Yeah, so you know, yeah. There's right. We're all meaning sometimes the same thing, right? Okay. So when we talk about this particle, it means not. You can have. They're all high tone. T-L-E-I-L. T-L-E-L. H-E-L. L-E-L. T-I-L. And then sometimes L. Those all mean not. And really it's just going to vary sometimes from place to place, but usually just from speaker to speaker. The ones that are really common are K. Those are your most common ones. So for now, I would say just stick to K. And then when you start to speak more, certain people, if you notice certain people from Teslin say it this way, go with that. Or your favorite speaker, go with what they just imitate. So now, when you see each other, good to see you. How you doing? I'm okay. We'll just stick with okay for now. But we'll get into the nuts and bolts of being grumpy, being sad, being happy. Anybody got a question?
So there's a difference in how you write the I's. Do they not sound the same? So like how you wrote the I.
If it has that little marker, that means it's high tone.
Okay.
So that little marker means high tone. So that would be tish. And if it didn't have it, it would be tish.
Okay.
So it's like ba, 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 ba. So it's not how hard, you know, high tones do come out a little bit. You gotta push your voice a little bit more. But it's really straight about tone. Think of it just like music. High note, or a little bit. Any other question? Okay. Let's do our sound practice. I'm going to switch over to our screen here. So we'll talk about vowels and then we'll just keep an eye on them. We always remember vowels. They can be high or low. Ya, a, ya, a. And we just start. Usually it's something new if we've been speaking. Does Yupik have any tone? Yeah, it's
Like,
a,
I don't know.
so some languages have them, some languages don't. Real old Tlingit didn't have them. Haida has tone. Haida has tone. And so it's one of the things you teach yourself how to listen to if you haven't experienced it before. And so the thing that you do is raise your finger, you raise your hand when it goes high tone. You do something to sort of help your body remember that you're focusing on that. And tone is very important. Tone is very important. It's, you know, the crazy hard consonants, my experience is you actually get those before you start to understand tone and vowel. That seems to be my experience, is that people are more likely to have problems with the vowels than the consonants. But some of the consonants can be really sneaky. The other thing is vowels are short and long, and they operate in pairs. So we see the pairs here. A, so we got to ah, to a, to e, and to oo. So we keep an eye on these vowels because sometimes they'll move back and forth, like that irsatine that we wrote on the board. Some people would say irsatine, some people will say irsatini, and they'll make it long. It sort of can go either way. Klech and kech, that T-L-E-I-L can become T-L-E-L. It just contracts. And when we get into verbs, we'll see that they move back and forth. Very regular patterns. So a lot of variables involved. So it's just something to keep an eye on as we move through our sound patterns. Okay, so can't remember where we got up to last time when we were doing technical explanations. I'll try and remember. You might do it. In the meantime, we'll move through them fairly fast. If you guys want to do extra sound practice, there's a YouTube channel that's dedicated for this class and other language activities. If you go to YouTube and you enter my English name, you can find the channel, or you can enter YouTube and in all capital letters, UAS AKLS. ANLS, sorry, Alaska Native Languages Studies. On there, there's some lessons, there's some video lessons, some things that talk about really advanced points of Tlingit grammar. But then there's also a thing where you can just sort of follow along with this sound practice drill that we do. You can also rewatch any of our classes here. They get broadcast on YouTube while we're here. And then about an hour after we're done, they're on YouTube. So if you missed a part of class, you can watch it. If you want to just do the sound practice again, or you want to just sort of revisit some discussion, you can always go on. You can share those. Anybody's welcome to look at them. Try to share the materials that we're using in here. There's another website, tlingit.info. I started a section on there called Beginning Tlingit. There's an electronic this handout that'll build as we go. Put it on your tablet or your phone or whatever you want to do on your computer. And again, share that with people who want to know. You don't have to. I appreciate everybody supporting the class, because some people can't afford to come. So the door is always open, and if people want to watch these videos, they should. Okay, so we'll do them each twice, and when we get to some of the sneakier ones where we left off, we might slow down. Wasus, 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 masus, 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 cheech,
Cheech.
cheech,
Cheech.
eat,
Eat.
eat,
Eat.
da,
Da.
da,
Da.
glade,
Glade.
glade,
Glade.
zade,
Zade.
zade,
Zade.
janbu,
Janbu.
janbu,
Janbu.
shoosh,
Shoo.
shoosh,
Shoo.
shoo, shoo, shoo,
Shoo.
Nusk,
News.
nusk,
News.
seek,
Seek.
seek,
Seek.
speak, speak,
Speak.
shaw,
Shaw.
shaw,
Shaw.
tia,
Tia.
tia,
Tia.
up,
Up.
up,
Up.
play shoe,
Play.
play shoe,
Play.
e,
E.
e,
E.
Sa,
Sa.
sa,
Sa.
ati,
Ati.
ati,
Ati.
yak,
Yak.
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 And kind of Chinook, the salmon, is that salmon, right? Okay. That same word is gumboot and haida.
Oh,
I
really?
think so.
Wow.
And we don't have the high tone on the A though, so it might be something.
Lower.
Mhm.
Wow. Yeah, it's a king salmon, and gumboot, I think it is shao. But there are, let's see, the words I know that are similar. You say, I think it's yay, or wait, someone walking up. And in haida it's yash. I think they're both haida. Yay, yash, and then eagle in Tlingit is chak, and in haida it's ak. And how do you say brown bear?
Hoots.
Yeah, hoots. And then Tlingit is hoots. Shakiet is a dance headdress. I think it's Sakiet. And I done one more the other day. Ya is the hummingbird, and haida it's duck duck ya. Okay. And always stop me if you have any questions. It's not interrupting. It's always good to just sort of be in the moment with language. I'd much rather have discussion than have you feel like you can't say anything. It's your learning experience. Gooch. Gooch. Gooch.
Gooch.
Cost.
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 Kimchi.
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 Husha.
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 I want to talk for a second about the X as opposed to the underlying X. X will always go like this. It's a scraping sound. Like when, if you were to imitate the wind, it was a really windy day, like say you're telling this awesome story. That's the X sound.
Kind of like when the crowd goes wild.
Yeah, they were really cheering. He was making a cappuccino. That's that sound. It is not. That's the one with the underline. A lot of times when people are learning Tlingit, they see the X and they go every time, right? But you could say, and then there's some words where it would make a big difference. And you could say, you could say Yohana this evening, Yohana this sweetheart, right? This boyfriend or girlfriend. So just keep an eye on that. It's the exact same place where you make a K. We make a K sound. We'll go put our mouth in that exact same position and kind of blow the air through and
Wait, is this for the underlined X?
no, this is the not underlined.
Okay.
We'll get to the underlined X, which is great.
And how would you describe the sound that the underlined X makes, like windy, crowd, or cappuccino? What is the equivalent for the underlined
The
X?
underlined X is snoring, clearing your throat. Right? I'm a world champion snorer, so you know, attribute that to my years of Tlingit study. Or you know, it's that thing that rings in the back. Or if you're going to make a sound like a raven, it's using that same thing. But it's unvoiced, you know, but it's that same realm. So when we got our wind thing, Dash Jenny, who's a teacher, colleague, and friend of mine, she says, okay, think of a cappuccino machine and then they turn it off all of a sudden and you go from to So physically, what you were doing is you were shutting your lungs off, pushing air out of your, the area where guys would have an Adam's apple. So it's from your throat, forcing that air out of your body. And so it's a little bit different. So the sound on its own is. And this word is og, 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 og. And to really get that sound to scrape, you gotta have a lot of spit back there on the ridge of your tongue. And that's what makes it, if you got a dry mouth, it's harder to make that sound. Guasha,
Washa.
guasha,
Washa.
guasha,
Washa.
guasha.
Washa.
So you guys are going to become verb root detectives over time. This is initial boot camp training. But here's a good way to spot. There's a lot of, when we get to Tlingit nouns, it's really interesting. One of the running theories that I subscribe to is that there's really old things that were here when Tlingit people came 15,000 years ago or so. And those are usually one-syllable words, sometimes two. Yesh, eek, hoots. They don't mean anything. That's just the name of that particular thing. But there are other things that maybe arrived and they got a descriptive name. They're long. Takitkiya is hummingbird. Ganda dagugu is woodpecker. And it literally means the thing that pecks around the wood. So sometimes they get descriptive names. There's a water ouzel, it's a bird. It lands and it bounces up and down all the time. And it likes to sit right in the water. And they call it hinikete, dances in the water. So some of them have really cool sort of manufactured names. Then there are other things that have a name where it's usually one syllable, sometimes two or three, followed by ah. When it ends with ah, more often than not, that means it's the thing that blank. And if you look right before ah, you're going to get a verb root. In Tlingit, you have a verb root, which is the core meaning. Gwash means to stab something. Or it could mean to ring a bell. It could mean either of those things. So gwasha, the stabber. Gwasha, gwasha. So you keep an eye out for those double A endings. There are a few that aren't, but we'll explain them as we go.
In dance class with Lyle, he was saying that that's how they use the daggers in close combat. They'd have a long weapon and then a dagger that they would stab into something.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, and so you can go like that. Or sometimes you come with a downward motion. Yeah, you are being very nice when you're.
Yeah. But that
good intention.
That just made me think of that.
There are at least two, maybe three, that are made out of meteorite and that are hundreds of years old, and they're awesome. The knowledge to see how finely they're crafted. I'll try and bring a picture in it.
So this might sound silly, but we have different words for different knives in English. Is there like a butter knife in the language?
There's two basic. There's this, which is the classic Tlingit war dagger, it's just for stabbing. You're not going to cut bread with this. You're not going to, And when it comes to war, it was actually, if that thing killed somebody, nobody should ever touch it unless they're going to kill somebody, right? It was a really serious thing when we're talking about like warfare and weaponry, because it was a big deal when things got to that level. Shita is the word for knife. I always say shita,
Shita.
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 Does anybody want to take a stab at, oh, that's a nice pun, spelling that word? Shita.
T-L-E-I-T-A. With the thing.
There was a tone, and there's a tone at the front.
T-L-I?
Okay, there's no T though.
Oh, L-I.
Shita.
L-I.
L, high tone to I, T-A-A. Fleet means to slide. So it's really interesting because it means the slider, because you sort of slide it through something and slices. So it's really interesting to think of. And that's the basic word for knife. And from there, you could start to modify butter knife, pocket knife. Yucatan shita would be the bent knife that's used for carving. And so there's a variety, and then there's a few other sort of scraping knives and things like that. But the two basic ones is the ones that stab and the ones that slice. And the slice ones are much more utility. Sort of like now, like if you walk around with a giant, dagger, you wouldn't really use that to open your mail. Okay.
How about tia?
Tia. What do you think T means?
I know totem pole.
Totem pole is kutia. So T means to chisel something with a flat chisel. So tia is the word for chisel, which means the chiseler. Right? So it's very appropriately named. Ku, and so one thing we do in this class, not everybody is a fan of, some fluent speakers don't like it, and I completely understand that. But sometimes we break down what these individual components mean, just so that you can see them and start to put them back together. The reason we do that is, we've read in the introduction about one of the big problems was you have people who never learned a second language, and you have teachers who never taught a second language. And historically, that was a big problem when people tried to revitalize the Tlingit language. And revitalize, when we say revitalize, we don't mean the language is dead. And we're trying to, that's language revival, right? And this has happened. There's a number of languages in North America where there were zero speakers, or absolutely zero speakers, sometimes for generations. And people reconstructed the language by written materials. They've done this. Tlingit is not in that state. We have learners, we have fluent speakers right now. It is highly endangered though. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to say, well, every year we're losing more than we're gaining. We would like to gain more than we lose. That's really all it comes down to. And we want to have bilingual communities where we can speak Tlingit. And in the case of Ketchikan, you probably want a multilingual community. We have multilingual communities. You have Tagalog, you have Spanish, you have lots of languages that are Korean is spoken here in Juneau. There are lots of languages that are spoken here in Juneau. And we just need to make sure that Tlingit has its space at the table. And its space should probably be the same size as any other language. So sometimes we break things in a little pieces. Ku comes on the front of nouns, and it has to do with a cylindrical object. And Tlingit is a classifying language. You're going to learn about these things called classifiers eventually that pop up in verbs. There's one right there. Ya is a classifier. See it there? You see it there? Sa is a classifier. So those are the three classifiers there. That's pointing to the board. But Tlingit puts things into categories all the time. All the time. It's always categorized. What type of object is that? What type of object is that? So you'll see ku at the front of certain nouns, especially if it's a three-syllable noun, it seems like. And that means the cylindrical thing that does something. In this case, kutia is a totem pole, and it doesn't chisel, but it has been chiseled. You make it with a chisel.
What about kui?
That's a different word. But that means to invite people. And that's based on a verb. Because I could say, I invited you, right? So you can start conjugating that verb. But pu means people. Kuhida, there's one, pencil, right? And so we're going to start seeing these things, and we'll see how the language, and when we unpack it, the reason we unpack it is one, just to see how the language functions. And that shows us how Tlingit people think in their language. Because it is. Whenever they would see some new thing, they would say, what are we going to call that thing? And sometimes it gets very descriptive. And when it gets descriptive, it gets really long. Not like the Ojibwe word for blueberry pie, which is like a million syllables long. But they do get pretty descriptive, like a straw is a the thing through which a person sucks to themselves through. A bicycle is a the thing that somebody kicks himself around on. Right? And so when Tlingit people look at it, they're like, yeah, well, that's kind of what he's doing. And so it gets really fun. It can get really hard because you see these big words. As we're learning new words, we're learning new concepts, we're learning new sounds. There's a good sort of subtle thing to keep in mind. Instead of saying, some people say, I can't do that. Instead of sort of quitting on it, you say, I have a hard time with that. And I think it's these little subtle switches that keep yourself positive, keep yourself going. Always continue. On Quady. On Quady. On Quady. On Quady. Ya. 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 Quat. 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 Zisk. 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 So you remember you said that W on the end, so you're always doing this little, like a little short breath. First up. Khwasta. 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 Ga. 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 Khwan. 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 Those are boots. Those are specifically boots, not shoes. Z. 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 Z.
And Haida, the W, you're just supposed to make the mouth, but you're not supposed to do the blowing part.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Just rounds?
Yeah, I think that's what Ben said.
Yeah, well, there's some things where it does just round, but then it's at the end, you get this little breath of air. Okay, so this one, now we're going to get into the back of the throat for a while. We've already encountered a couple sounds that nobody has found in any other language. So this one, if you're pretending to drink water, you go look, 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 right? That's what this sound is. Punch, 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 punch. Now the K would sound like the pinched underlying K sounds like this. A taste. A taste. A taste. A taste.
How do you make the, or, we're moving over time.
That first one?
Mm-hmm.
So that first one, there's this little guy that dangles right towards the back of your throat. And what you're doing is you sort of, feels like you're pushing it back against your throat and then throwing it off. So we start with the K. Go to an underlying K. And if we hold our breath and try to make that sound without breathing. So if you make the first one, and you put your hand in front of your mouth, you can feel that breath. This is just an underlying K. Same with the regular K. Ka, ka, ka. Right, oops, I was adding a bump. But you can feel that breath. And when you make the pinched consonants, you should very hardly feel any breath at all. And now the underlying K. So when I put my hand in front of my face, in front of my mouth, I don't feel any breath when I make that sound. And it's one, it might come in time, but it's back here. Right. A cage.
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 So these are some of the sneakier sounds, but the important thing is don't get frustrated. And it might take a whole month before you can do something like this. But it might be a sound you've never made before. So one thing that you do is you just walk around and you listen to it and you practice, and then eventually you'll make the sound. You'll make the sound because your body will hear it enough that it'll want to repeat it. But for now, sometimes it doesn't know where to go to find that spot. But it is. It's all that little dangly guy right in the back of your throat. So the next one is hot. Hot, 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 hot. So we keep that vowel high and we keep it long. I had a student, he did an awesome project. And he took the commercial video for the Alaska Marine Highway. And he took all the audio off of it and he made it Tlingit instead. It was very fun. He put like Ed Littlefield's Tlingit jazz music. But there was a part where these brown bears are eating fish. So you want him to say, Chad achawe hoots. The brown bears are eating fish. But he didn't make the vowel long, so he said, Chad achawe hoots. The brown bears are eating meat. Say hello for calling about the whole thing. Just a little about that. So when we've got that sound, that's that underline X. So if that underline is there, we're not doing any of that guttural stuff. But here's another pinched consonant that could be sneaky. So that underline pinch K goes, so it's real forceful from the start. This one tends to scrape a little bit. On, 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 on. So your lungs are off when you start. They don't turn on until that vowel. On. Oh, and that last one, chat, that's any kind of fish, but usually means a salmon. Could be a goldfish, could be a trout, could be a guppy. But usually you would specify if it's not a salmon, you might specify after. But it could just mean any, there's some kind of fish. You just say chat. Huayna.
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 So we see those two A's at the end. Anybody want to guess what the verb part is?
Covered. Cleaning. Something. Cleaning.
In there.
Wait, is 3 A's yes or?
Yeah, 3 A's is yes.
Okay.
And then 2 A's at the end of a noun often means it's something that and then there's some verb right before it does. And this one is a wiper, wiping or mopping. Quan, 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 quan. So we're going to get into nouns that we have a fancy term for them, which is inalienable. But that means these nouns don't sit on their own. And this is one of them. So in the dictionary, you look it up, it'll have the letter A before it. In some texts, it'll have a long, what we call an M dash, which looks like a really long hyphen before it. And that means you have to have something there, right? So this is the people of a place. So we'd say Akhuan, the people of Little Lake. Akhuan, the people of the King Salmon Cove. And so you'll see them all over the place in Tlingit country. And it just means the people of some certain place. The other way that this word is used is if you have some sort of animal or plant or something, and you would say, instead of saying Kwan, you'd say Kwani. So when you say Kwani, that means tree, people. So that means you're talking about them as if they are actually people. And there's different realms of Tlingit. It's really interesting to study. This is good to know. And there's different realms of English, right? You don't talk the same everywhere you go. If you're hanging out with your friends and it's just you guys, you would talk differently than if you were at somewhere where people could hear you, or if you were at a funeral, or if you were at, you change the way you talk depending on where you go. That's just natural. It's just what people do. In Tlingit, there's talk between people who really know each other. They're really comfortable. They can tease each other a lot. And it's almost an anything goes type of thing. You want to be careful, but there's a lot of teasing that does go on in Tlingit. And a lot of laughing and other types of things like that. But if someone comes in that you don't know, you've got to be careful. Because they might say, oh, that guy just makes fun of other people's clan, And so you don't want people talking much like that. And you might offend that person. You don't know what, Tlingit is really clan-centered in the way that we think of things. So if somebody comes in, we don't know who they are, we don't know who their family is, we don't know what their status is. And once we figure those things out, we might adjust a little bit. There's also ceremonial speaking, whether that's speaking at a funeral, speaking at a ku'ik, speaking at some certain event. And usually you're addressing specifically your clan opposites. There's a really structured way. It's not like it's scripted, but there are certain things you do, and there's a lot of things you don't do. Very careful the way you speak publicly. And then there's ceremonial Tlingit, where you might actually talk to the trees. You might talk to the fish. You might talk to the rocks. You might talk to these different things. Parts in prayer before you go hunting. Parts of it, so before the fish come back, you might talk to them. And it's to try and keep balance in the world, trying to keep things right. Maybe you're really suffering. A lot of your family members might die within a short window. And you might lament, you might yell at the weather, there's all kinds of things you might do. So these are these different stages, and this is sort of kind of the vocabulary starts to change. No.
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 Share. Shanahuai.
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 Duhun.
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 do hun. When we get into kinship, which we will in a couple weeks, we'll talk about how it works. But this is a male's older brother. And when we talk about brother, that means someone who's from the same clan or sometimes even the same moyed. Doesn't necessarily mean you have the same parents at all. There's no Tlingit word for cousin. There's no Tlingit word for second cousin. Once removed, but all that, we'll think of it totally differently when we see the Tlingit kinship system. It's also different for men and women. Quad. 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 Neck.
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 Yana 8.
Yana 8.
Yana 8.
Yana 8.
Hit.
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 All right, any questions, thoughts? So one of the things that we do is we're focusing on these sounds, but we're also learning the names for all of these things. So initially, we're really focused on how do we make these sounds, what's going on here, to also look at the letters and put them together so we can start figuring out how to read and write some Tlingit. And then the other thing is you're really looking at that thing and thinking, that's what I'm going to start doing. So we're not necessarily moving back and forth between Tlingit and English and saying, oh, this means that. But instead, we're really focusing on those images and thinking about those particular objects that they have. Starting tomorrow, what I'd like to do is, as you guys have read the introduction to beginning Tlingit, those first 73 pages, I'd like you guys all to write down two things. Write down two things that come to mind, questions, statements, and you're going to bring those tomorrow. And we'll lead off with a discussion about that section at the beginning. And I'll have a number of questions about this. And then we'll start getting into our first question and answer drill. We'll keep doing this sound drill. And since an hour goes by pretty fast when we're doing this, we might do it just once each time without stopping, just to do a little bit of warm up. But then we'll move into more structured lessons, learning some basic questions. Right? Hindi kasi hindi na chisha, good away.